I want to conclude by just sharing with you one last story, and then we will hopefully have time for questions. I gave a class like this in 1984 at the University of Pennsylvania. I actually gave it for every year I was there, but this particular year, there was a fellow sitting in the class who was a professional missionary to the Jewish people. He's still active, actually, in the Philadelphia area. So he's sitting quietly in the back of the class, and we did this basic class tonight about Christian proof texting. And then at the end of the class, we take questions, and he's chomping at the bit. He gets up and he says, "Look, Rabbi Skobac, you're trying to show how these passages in the Jewish Bible, these passages that are used from the Jewish Bible, are being taken out of context by Christians. And they don't really mean exactly what they mean in context." He says to me, "But isn't this exactly what the rabbis do in the Talmud, in the Midrash, in the Agada?" He was very happy that he learned these words. Right? Isn't this exactly what the rabbis do when they have a Midrash, that they explain verses in ways that may not sound exactly like the context? And he said that's what happens in the book of Matthew. He says, don't be so surprised that these verses don't fit into the actual original context. Matthew is writing a Midrash. That's what his point was. And I said to him, you know what? Point well taken. Point well taken. But let's think for a second about what this means. There are two essential ways of reading any text, but let's say the Jewish Bible. There is something that we refer to as Pshuto Shel Mikra, Pshat. Pshat means basically the simple, straightforward, literal meaning of what the text says. The text says that they brought 10 cows as a present. What does it mean? They brought 10 cows as a present. That's the Pshat. Midrash is a poetic, subjective, symbolic, allegorical interpretation of what a text might be referring to, symbolically, allegorically. So maybe it's talking about the 10 Commandments. Maybe it's talking about something else that's 10. So this is what we call Midrash. Midrash is not dealing with the simple, straightforward, literal, unadorned meaning of the text, what it says. That's not the enterprise. That's not the interest of Midrash. Pshat is dealing with the surface level meaning of the text. What does it say? Simple, straightforward. Midrash is what might this text be alluding to? What might it be symbolic of? And Midrash by nature is very poetic, very subjective, very allegorical. So I said to this missionary the following. I said, listen to the words that you're using. I said, when you approach Jewish people with your claims, what are you saying to us? You're saying to us, you know what, if you Jewish people would simply open your eyes and open your hearts and look at the Bible for what it clearly and plainly teaches, you will see that Jesus is the Messiah. Now, I said to him, you're backing off. And you're saying, well, no. What we're teaching is not what the Bible actually says. Now what you're saying to us is, if you Jews will accept our subjective, speculative, poetic reinterpretation of what the Bible might be allegorically alluding to somehow out there, then you should believe in Jesus. You really want to say that? Because that's what you're saying to me. You're saying that all of our literature is Midrash. I said to him, you yourself would realize that Midrash has no probative value. You cannot prove anything from a allegorical, subjective, poetic, speculative interpretation of what you think a text might be alluding to. Because that requires that I buy into your highly subjective, speculative, allegorical interpretation of what the text might mean. The only level at which a text can be used to prove anything is if you engage it on a level of pshat. The straightforward, simple, plain, unadorned, literal meaning of the text. That's a level that you're able to use the text to prove something or not prove something. But I said to him, a text that can mean anything means nothing. Once you take that much license to say, well, to me, it means this. So, what use is that in terms of proving anything? What might have happened is that originally, when the writers of Matthew were writing, it's possible, I'm going to be generous now, it's possible that the writers of Matthew did understand that the passages that they were quoting were being quoted out of context, and that Hosea and Yirmiyahu are not really talking about Jesus. They understood that they were taking these passages and using them midrashically. They understood that. But what happened over time is that in the consciousness of Christians who began to lose this distinction between allegorical and literal, what happened is the midrashic level of reading the text got promoted to a pshat level. So now when Christians read the Jewish Bible and they're reading it with Jesus' glasses on, they somehow begin to see this as the real meaning of the text. Now that might be a generous assessment as to what happened, meaning that at one point there was an understanding that these texts are not really proofs, but over time they became fixed in the consciousness of the Christian. Their map of reality became, this is really the meaning. The other possibility is that, as we say in the Talmud, Ahava mekalkelas hashura, that when we are in love with something and infatuated with something, it has an impact on clarity. And so, because the Christian is so obsessed with seeing Jesus, the Christian says to me, Michael, you're so terrified of Jesus, you're so terrified of him, you're not able to read the Bible clearly. And I would say, S2 missionary, that because you are so obsessed with seeing him, that what happens is you end up distorting the Bible in order to shoehorn him in wherever possible. What is our bottom line for tonight? I'll simply go back to what the rabbi's sermon was today in the synagogue, that we as a Jewish people have been known for our whole history as the people of the book. And it's important that we actually lay claim to that title and that we actually deserve the title. It's quite tragic that for far too many Jewish people, the Bible is an unopened book. You know, when Jews for Jesus runs training seminars in churches, and they try to encourage Christians to convert their Jewish friends and neighbors, many Christians are intimidated by Jews. They think that every Jew is an Old Testament scholar. Like when I was growing up, if you were Japan, you knew karate. So there was a feeling among many Christians that I can't talk to them about the Bible. They're going to blow me away. They're Old Testament scholars. And I'm going to tell you right now what the Jews for Jesus missionaries say in the churches. They say, do not be intimidated by the Jewish people. The vast majority of them have never opened the Jewish Bible. Never opened it. So if there's one message I can leave you with tonight, it's that this is an amazing book. Not that we should learn it. God forbid. Not that we should learn it simply because it's important to be able to have an intelligent discussion with the person sitting on the plane next to you. The book is important in its own right. It's truly an amazing, incredible book that will bring tremendous joy and insight and edification to anyone who studies it. It's the reason why it's still the best-selling book in the world. So I'll leave you with that commercial, and I'll ask my friend Dr. Weinberg to conclude the evening. Thank you all.